Hi folks, we're looking at a book called Against All Gods, What's Right and Wrong About the New Atheism, Phil E. Johnson and John Mark Reynolds. And so we're going to just read a bit of chapter 7, but I'd encourage atheists and Christians to read it. I respect Philip E. Johnson, but this essay is by John Mark Reynolds. I'll just read a few snippets, and then I'll give a link to the book, and then just ask one or two questions. It says, it's about a wonderful education concerning New Atheism. The best thing about New Atheists is that they are starting some good conversations. For too long, religion has been treated as totally private and not subject to scrutiny inside of education. That is too bad, because it infantilizes religion and cuts off a great many interesting conversations. Conversations about religion can be wonderful and help us all shape a better life for ourselves. Writing for outlets like the Washington Post leads to lots of interesting email. Some critics claim that my job as an educator at a religious institution is hopelessly impractical and a bad deal for my students. Whenever a critic wishes to really let me have it, he or she will point out that I work at Biola University, formerly the Bible Institute of Los Angeles, where the faculty is required to agree with a creedal statement. How can I do philosophy, or even real education, in such a constricting environment? Leaving aside the fact that Biola University has not been a Bible Institute for over half a century, the critic is really concerned about the compatibility of faith with reason. Isn't faith the opposite of reason, as one email put it? Christians believe things despite the evidence. If true, that obviously makes living a rational life impossible. For the critic, faith is a set of opinions, and though you can repeat opinions perhaps in a clever way, you do not need an education to have them. The critic of religious education argues that it is impossible to be educated without cultivating a spirit of skepticism, but skepticism is antithetical to the religious spirit. Skepticism needs doubt, and doubt is the opposite of faith. Science, philosophy, and reason require a doubting Thomas, while religion wishes to cure Thomas of all his doubts. In the Los Angeles Times, biologist P.Z. Mayers put it in this way: it's hard not to take seriously a bizarre collection of antiquated superstitions that are furiously waved in our faces, in our schools, on television, in our politics, and even on newspaper editorial pages. That we take the intellectually bankrupt belief of religion seriously is precisely why we do question it, and will continue to question it in our boring way by simply speaking out. If this series of insults directed at the very idea of religious knowledge and education with a basis in religion were not enough, there is the idea that education should be practical. The practical person points out that in the modern world most people get education for good jobs, or to open up opportunities for better jobs. Religion is not very practical, and at least for most people it is not very lucrative, and so the practical person pushes it aside. College is too expensive to spend good money. Think about religion. Students are reduced to mere consumers in a university dominated either by skepticism or an obsession with money-making, or both. There is no energy or time left for faith. But this very combination of critics and their ability to leave cozier together should make us consider whether there is not a better way. Surely there is more to life than cynicism, debunking, and anger. Most of us know from a bitter experience that there's something more. Happiness cannot be found in accumulating things. If he who dies with the most toys wins, then it must have been a pretty stupid game to play. But don't take my word for it. Even if your experience, pick up any catalogue from a liberal arts college and read its goals. The college promises so much more than teaching skepticism and money-making in return for their expensive tuitions. Is there a better way? There is, and it is the reason that a college catalogue still read as if education were about human beings' virtues and is wonderful. The first way to restore beauty and wonder to education is to put skepticism in its place. Like gay is a word that used to mean one thing and now means something else entirely. It's hard to use it meaningfully at all. Skepticism was a good thing, but now it stands for toxic attitude that makes genuine happiness difficult. When Socrates told his young followers to inquire for themselves, not just blindly accept the platitude of their elders, he was advancing a noble form of skepticism. Socrates thought there was a truth and that it was knowable, but that's the end of the little passage there. Education, New Atheism, just a little thought there. What should be the basis of a good education? And how does New Atheism or the Atheism help to provide that? And how does Christianity help to provide it? Or does Atheism impede education? Or does Christianity impede education? If you check out Westminster Theological Seminary, if you type in and Google Westminster Theological Seminary, you'll see some lectures. If you look for Cornelius Van Til, Christian apologist, he's been dead a while now, but he's done some lectures on education and Christianity as a basis for this video that you can go and research. Westminster Theological Seminary, Cornelius Van Til on education. I think there is this importance of questioning, there's no doubt about it, but I think the problem with atheism is that it's okay to question, but if you've got no universals to put your questions and to put the information that you're learning in its context, then your questions end up just being questions and don't really generate fruitfulness in your own life. That's the first thing. I think you need universals. I think you need a universal idea of what it is for the meaning of life, a universal idea of what human dignity is. Otherwise, if your education is piecemeal, if you're just giving piecemeal information and not building your knowledge as a unified whole, then people will be educated not to think across disciplines, not to think in a holistic terms. So I think that's probably one of the weaknesses of atheism. When you look at the Renaissance and you look at the education of the Renaissance people, they tried to cross disciplines, they tried to interact with painters, interacted with philosophers interacted with painters. There was a cross dialogue between the disciplines in the Renaissance, and Christianity seeks to promote that. It seeks to try and see how all the disciplines work together. So that's how I see Christian education. I think when you start to paint this idea that Christians want to come in and bring creationism and stunt people's intellectual growth, I think that's a gross caricature of Christian education. Basically, if you haven't got some parameters of what you believe, your education is going to fall apart. If you study biology and you study sociology and you study psychology, but you don't know what it is to be human and why humans are dignified, then it's not going to be fruitful. If you study economics, but you don't have a strong sense of what justice is, then it's not going to be fruitful in the future. You see, it all impacts. So general principles are important as a basis for education. And Christianity provides some general principles. The principle of there's a meaning to life, what it is to be human, how to conduct your life. And it's interesting that some people who've been really uneducated, when they become Christian, they grow in their learning. For example, John Bunyan, who was a tinker, he was a very poor man, uneducated, but when he became a Christian, he began to read and learn and study and grow, and he became a great writer. So I don't see that true Christianity impedes learning. It inspires it. C.K. Chesterton, C.S. Lewis, Cornelius Van Til, Francis Schaeffer, De Veerwood, this guy, John Owen. believed in education. And perhaps some of the greatest educationalists came from Christianity. If you look back at history, you look back at the 16th century, some of the greatest educationalists, that what's based on education today and how we are to have an education comes from Christian thinkers. I'll put a link to some helpful information there. So I'll just leave you with the thought about atheism and education and Christianity. I'm just learning. Don't forget Cornelius Van Til on it. Alright, take care and God bless you. What do you think, atheists? What do you think, Christians? Please let me know.